The importance of validation is to restore self-worth and dignity to somebody who is hurt. There are two types of validation. There's one type, but essentially I'm going to explain it in two different ways. Number one, valid means matter. To validate is to listen with empathy, to allow somebody to know that their feelings matter. The reason why it's important to listen, because if we offer to help, there are so many helpers, what we are doing is we aren't trusting that person to choose their own feelings, to figure out a way to think and feel better. But when we listen with empathy, we offer a safe place that restores the dignity to that person, where they can express themselves and they can think and feel, and find a way on their own to feel better. But too often times when we tell somebody that we are hurt, especially if we go in telling somebody that they've hurt us, we create a defense. So what ends up happening is they will either excuse it, deny it, compare it. They will blame it, reverse it and blame it back on you, saying, well, it's because you did this. They will dismiss it and just not even acknowledge it. They'll guilt trip you and say, you're always trying to make me feel so bad about myself. Or, oh, you think you're so perfect, and shame you. And and it's really hard to find somebody that would just even listen anymore, especially when you're going into the person that has hurt you. And it depends how you go in telling that person that they have hurt you. Most times, we are shame-based as a human, and you won't be able to get that person. Once they've already hurt you, there's a very small chance that they will actually validate you and say, you know what, I have hurt you and I am sorry. But because hurt hurts so bad, this is something we as humans need. So we got to learn how to validate ourselves. So how we can validate somebody or ourselves is a 3-step process. What we need to do is, whatever the problem may be, and this happens a lot in seniors and working in the hospice, there's a lot of people before they pass on, they need to release. And there is another video on YouTube about validation that is similar to this. Let's say somebody was in the war and they just can't seem to let go of some guilt that they have. And they tell you that they can't let go. In the 3-step process, you would take a deep breath and you would try to put yourself in that person's shoes. Imagine what it would be like to be them and what you would feel if you were in that situation. And then you respond to them back as a question. You can't let go? And it's really just that simple. You allow that person to talk. You listen to them as they think and feel, and they're going to find a way to feel better on their own. This is going to release a huge weight off their shoulder. When we offer them advice and when we try to fix and help them, we're almost in a way discrediting their feeling. We're saying that, no, we don't trust you to have that feeling, or your feeling is wrong. And by helping that person, we're disabling them in a way from being able to feel that, And a lot of times you'll hear somebody say, stay positive. But when somebody's hurt, that kind of hurts more because you're saying it's not okay to be hurt. And forget the past. I mean, when somebody's dealing with the past, it's not okay. It doesn't feel good to hear somebody say forget the past. Most oftentimes when somebody says forget the past, it's usually something that they did that they want us to forget. I hate to say it, but another thing is blame is shame. Sometimes when you hear somebody talking about somebody else, they'll tell you what they're actually doing, but they'll say it's about somebody else, projecting it. So it's really important to know that people do usually tell the truth, but if they are the kind of person that seems to be blaming a lot, they're telling you the truth, but they're projecting it, saying it's somebody else that's done it instead of themselves. Always, when somebody is hurt, the most important thing is validated. Just listen with empathy and trust that person to choose their feelings rather than trying to fix it, because that can really hurt that person. When somebody's sensitive, it's hard to say. There's so many things that a person can do to make that sensitivity turn into more hurt. Even saying stay positive. Really all people want is somebody to listen with empathy. It's really important. The second kind of validation is just basically human nature. We are all, not all of us, but most of us don't know how to express our feelings. That's why when you walk down the street, say, hey, how you feeling? Or how you doing? Good or fine is what you get. Is that because they don't know how they feel, or because they've been told that negative feelings, nobody wants to hang out with them, negative, that's what they say, right? You're too negative, I don't want to hang out with you, you hear a lot, right? So it's like people almost believe that because they hang out with somebody negative, that means they're going to be negative. They don't take the control over themselves and say, no, just because that person's negative, that person could be hurt. Maybe I should listen to them and maybe I can help them. But as humans, I believe that when we discipline behavior, we don't ask ourselves, well, what is behavior? Behavior is feelings, thoughts, and action. When we discipline a 2-year-old who hit his friend, we are disciplining his anger, a feeling. Anger is a cover emotion for hurt and fear. We are disciplining a child who is hurt or afraid. What does this do? This shames the anger. This child may end up growing up to repress anger, thinking that it's not okay and become a people pleaser or a self-sacrificer, never learning that they matter. If a person is doing really well, say a child who's always doing his homework and he's making his bed, he doesn't cry, doesn't complain, and there's no worries usually to the parents, but they don't notice that. A child believes if my feelings are bad, I am bad. If my feelings don't matter, I don't matter. This is critical. Growing up without a sense of self comes from this type of, and it's usually not just discipline, it comes in the form of punishment and abuse, but it doesn't help, right? I believe that discipline and punishment are pretty much the exact same thing. It's just a manipulation of the word. It wouldn't matter if I sat my son down and said, it's not you that's bad, but it's what you did that's bad. I'm sure he's going to feel shame either way. John Watson came out with the punishment and reward style thing, and it had detrimental effects. So why not take a closer look at discipline before we begin to discipline? I am guilty of this, and I'm also a victim of PAS. My ex was able to easily jump on a plane after texting me he'd be a little bit late and take my kids across country. My children weren't able to express their feelings, and therefore haven't been able to tell them how they feel. And now that it's been this long, they've already been raised by him who doesn't acknowledge the feelings. And not good. Parental alienation syndrome is probably one of the most devastating things because children are not asked how they felt. And how many other situations are children not asked how they felt? When we aren't asked how we felt, we will say good or fine. We won't know that our feelings matter, and we won't know that we're valid. So we'll start seeking that outward. We'll start looking for approval and attention. We'll be the attaboy or attagirl where we want to do good for people just to be told that we are good. If we don't know that our feelings matter, we can't say no. What happens when we can't say no? We can't say no to sex. We can't say no to drugs. We can't say no to criminal activity. We can't say no, and the opposite end of the spectrum come the children who are more angry and they've suppressed anything that is to do with being good. Well, we are bonded by the laws of attraction, and we meet, but we fall into trouble. If we can't say no to sex, drugs, or criminal activity, we end up adults with drug addictions, criminal records, and right behind us, and how does this ever end? If you aren't taught something, how can you know it? We didn't know that the world was round until somebody went and figured that out. So I do believe that we are products of our childhood, and until that gets dealt with, we stay in that. You don't change something if you don't know something is off or needs to be fixed. So if you haven't been validated as a child, you would know this because you would fear authority, you would have excessive amounts of guilt or shame, you would be pretty much the kind of person that tries to keep relationships together, never being able to leave a relationship, having attachment traumas. A lot of the times you will know this because you are either an alcoholic, or you've got an addiction, or you've fallen in love with somebody who has an addiction or is an alcoholic. With money, you will be either over-responsible or under-responsible. With fun, you'll either want to have too much fun or you won't know how to have fun. So there's quite the broad spectrum, but this is the symptoms of ACOA, an adult child of an alcoholic. Not necessarily an alcoholic, because it's also adult children of dysfunctional homes. Basically where one parent is the dominant parent, where the children aren't able to express their feelings, because they are seen as a extension of the parent. So not that I'm saying it's the parents' fault because they couldn't have taught you if they weren't taught themselves. So basically, if you still are able to tell somebody, yeah, you make me angry, or that person pissed me off, well, the truth of the matter is it's not the person that made you angry. It is what they have said. You chose to let it affect you in a way that caused you to feel anger. We are unable to control or change the way people think unless we can spray a smell in the air, because certain smells do trigger certain feelings. Other than that, we can't actually, and I know this sounds like, because at the worst case scenario, rape, that person still chooses their feelings. And I know that that's hard to say because, like, of what the situation is happening, but with dissociation, if the person were to dissociate, they wouldn't feel anything probably at all. Or say there are some people who are into S&M or whatever, there are people that would actually like that. That's going to cause a lot of controversy right there, just saying that. But let's say somebody comes up and says, you're stupid. Well, it's basically how you let that word or that person's tone or however affect you. That will be what controls your ultimate feeling. That will be how you chose to feel angry, but that person didn't actually make you mad. This is how narcissists can easily abuse their victims, because at the end of the day, when it comes to court sentencing, they never made you. And that's kind of like, ooh. They just set everything up into alignment, and then all of a sudden you fell for it, and that's what happens, right? Then they say, well, I didn't actually make you. Other than that, to validate children is to validate them between, usually when they are seeking individuation and differentiation between ages 2 and 3, or up into teens, but then by then it'd be a little bit late. But when a toddler comes up and they're trying to seek their individuality, that's when they usually are taught that their feelings matter. People who say good or fine are usually the ones that haven't been taught that and don't know that it is their right to choose their feelings and don't even know how to identify with how they feel. The only way to get past that is to continuously ask yourself over and over, how do I feel? How do I feel? How did I feel when this happened? How did I feel when that happened at Christmas? Just go back into time, go through situations that had occurred, and ask yourself over and over, how did I feel? This is important to be able to identify your feelings. Feelings are important, however, at the end of the road, they will still be feelings, and they can always be changed like that. Like thoughts, they can be changed like that. Our feelings and our thoughts are our perception of how we feel. Just like how a sense of smell is, how we perceive the smell, how we perceive the thought, how we perceive the feeling. Everything is the perception of how we see it in our own individual self from our point and perspective. But it will be different for everybody, right? Okay, and so never too late to validate, and hopefully this helps people with validation and understanding the long-term effects of validation.